Targeting is a term used by a lot of advertising and marketing people, but it's typically referring to demographic or psychographic targeting. Demographic targeting being age brackets, 18 to 34, 25 to 54, 35 to 64, or 65 plus, or 54 to the grave, or whatever. But there's a demographic target, and even people who use demographic targets know that it's a fallacy to a large degree. It's a flawed concept, but it's better than nothing, perhaps. And then psychographic targeting. If you're going to advertise in a photography magazine, what common characteristic do you think the readers all have? An interest in photography. And so that is a psychographic profile. That is a common denominator of a group. However, psychographic profiles can easily become pop culture myths. Now, the reality of targeting, if we're going to use a psychographic profile that is not a cultural myth, but is true and is true of each of us, and it's a dualistic target. Not only is it true of all of us, but it's equally true of all of us. There are two kinds of customers, relational and transactional, and each of you are both kinds of customer. The single most important defining characteristic of the customer is whether they are shopping your product or service category transactionally or relationally.
The third step in the uncovering is targeting. Now, do you prefer to attract relational or transactional customers? There is a difference. You're not a $100 bill. Not everyone is going to like you. Will you look principally for relational, or will you look principally for transactional? It will change the color of your campaign. The two kinds of customers are these. The relational customer thinks long-term, considers today's transaction to be one in a series of many. They do not enjoy comparison shopping or negotiating. The relational customer fears only making a poor choice, buying the wrong one. The relational customer hopes to find an expert they can trust. And they consider their time spent shopping to be part of the purchase price. Lastly, the relational customer is very likely to become a repeat customer. Let's compare that to the transactional customer. They're measuring now. What are you going to do for me today? They think short term. The transactional customer cares only about today's transaction. The transactional customer enjoys the process of shopping and negotiating. They love this. They're having the time of their life. They fear only paying more than they had to pay. Paying too much. The transactional shopper is willing to spend lots of time investigating. They'll read consumer reports. They'll go from store to store to store looking for people who know all about the product or service category and becoming an expert themselves. You see, they want to consider themselves the expert. Highly defensive, typically a little adversarial. Suspicious customers. You've seen a million of them, haven't you? And they tend to hinge every transaction on price. Transactional customers are, however, a very good source of word-of-mouth advertising. You see, they're anxious to tell everyone what a wonderful deal they got because they are such a good investigative shopper. They can be sources of lots of business. So we can't completely ignore the transactional shopper. They can send you an enormous number of relational shoppers. Do you remember I said relational shoppers are looking for an expert they can trust? Well, sometimes that expert they can trust is their totally fixated, obsessive friend who spent days or perhaps even weeks studying this product or service category, and then that transactional friend chose you to do business with. Oh yes, transactional customers are not to be ignored, although the money is in relational customers. You see, a customer can be highly relational in one product category and transactional in another category. This can happen from moment to moment. You can be going through the aisle of the grocery store and be very relational in your choice of milk. And so you buy the organic milk from only a certain kind of cows that graze only on a certain hillside in a certain country at a certain time of day. And it doesn't matter what they charge for that milk, you're a relational shopper in that category. You think it's worth it. But next to the milk are the eggs. And perhaps you're transactional in eggs. You think that eggs are eggs are eggs. The color of the egg, the size of the egg, whether they're white or whether they're brown, and what kind of chickens they came from, and what those chickens eat, perhaps doesn't matter to you at all. And the person behind you is exactly the opposite. Transactional in milk, relational in eggs. So yes, everyone is both categories, but in each category, most people will be one or the other, either relational or transactional.
I was speaking at the Food Marketing Institute, and this year their meeting was in Las Vegas. Now this was the directors of marketing of the 300 most successful grocery chains in North America. The US and Canada, the grocery stores, these are the big guys, the big 300. All the regional and national grocery chains. And I was the cleanup batter. I was the wrap-up speaker, the last guy at the end of 3 days. And I got there a few hours early, and I got to hear the two people before me. And during the breaks, I'm seeing the walls are covered with brilliantly executed, very traditional grocery store ads. And I'm listening to all these people talking about all this market. It's purely 3 days of marketing of groceries. I'm going, boy, this is all short time horizon. This is all transactional targeted. And so I went through this little presentation that we're not done with yet. And I said, how many people in the room are certain that in your industry, all of your customers are transactional? And of course, every hand went up. Oh yeah, groceries. People who drive all the way across Kansas to save 14 cents on a can of Folgers. I said, you know, when it comes to transactional advertising, you people are some of the best in the world. No question about it. Now I have a question for you. How many of you enjoy or appreciate the process of buying a new car, where you go to the new car dealer and you have to cross swords with a salesperson and see who's going to screw the other, right? Is he going to get you to buy his deal, or are you going to get him to buy your deal? And how many of you enjoy spending, a whole weekend going back and forth between 2 or 3 dealers, working them against each other? And out of 300 people in the room, I saw maybe, it was definitely less than a dozen, 8, 9 hands went up. And I said, is it fair to say, if you agree with my statement, raise your hand. Is it fair to say the rest of you pretty much hate the guts of car dealers? The other 292 hands went up. I said, but here's what's amazing. The only reason I even made the point is this. Every car dealer on earth would swear on his mother's life that all customers are transactional when it comes to buying a car. They refuse to believe anybody would even consider just going to the car dealer that they liked and buying the car because they believed they were going to get the right price. Do you understand why you will either consciously or unconsciously choose to target transactionally or relationally? Okay? Now, why did Saturn enjoy such an immediate success when it was first introduced? Because they had a sword in the stone. Do you know what it was? You can have this car any color you want, but the price is the price. You either pay it or get the hell out of here. Because what we're not going to do. Now, the degree to which those prices were truly cast in stone, and the degree of the public's confidence to believe this is a car for people who hate car dealers. It's a car for people who hate the process of trying to decide which one to buy. That first year for Saturn, I think they had one car, didn't they? You could have any color you wanted, but this is the car. This is a Saturn. And this is the price, and the price doesn't change. Pay what's on the sticker or go away. As that North Star, that guiding light, began to wane and flicker, and you could negotiate the price of a Saturn, what happened? It became less of a powerful brand. It became less of an icon in our mind. But they did establish one thing. there were a number of people, a significant number of people. They had an opportunity to be a true cult brand. They fell short. How? Because the dealers were unwilling to pay the price of remaining true to what they said was their identity.